Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Anthony, and the winter holidays are upon us all. And I thought it would be a good idea to show you all the PS5 and the new Xbox Series X and S, and talk about the pros and cons of both systems to help you guys decide which one better suits your needs, because I've had both consoles since the very beginning of the year. Got super lucky, don't ask me how. And yeah, anyways, let's get straight into the video. Now, let's start our comparison with the controller. The DualSense 5 has some interesting new features compared to the PS4 controller. There's obviously the new haptic feedback, and that's way more than just rumbling or vibrations. They can amplify the immersion by making you feel certain terrains and impacts. It also affects the triggers. For example, if you use a bow, the R2 and L2 buttons get progressively tighter. And let's say you use a gun and it gets jammed. The trigger gets so hard it becomes almost impossible to pull. It makes the games feel a lot more immersive and realistic. It's kind of hard to explain, but trust me, it's very noticeable when done right. As soon as I play a game that doesn't support them, I feel right away that something is missing apart from the touchpad and speakers, which already existed on the PS4 controller. We also now have an integrated mic and mute button. Now, the Series X and S controller has no innovation apart from the addition of a share button, plus it still requires AA batteries, which is an extra bit of money that you'll have to spend. Still needing to use AA batteries in 2021 is ridiculous in my personal opinion, plus I'm kind of a cheap fuck, so yeah. Anyways, even though ergonomically speaking, I do prefer the Series X controller, the PS5 controller is still really nice and comfy, and if the game supports haptic feedback and adaptive triggers, then I always make sure to get it on PS5 instead. Now, let's move on to the reason why most people buy a console. The games. And most importantly, games that you can only play on that specific console. So, let's take a look at both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X/S and their exclusives so far. On the Series X, you can play Microsoft Flight Simulator. And that's about it for console exclusives, meaning games that may also be available on PC but not any other console, just like Deathloop on the PS5. Other than that, The Ascent, 12 Minutes, Forza Horizon 5, and Halo Infinite are also available on Xbox One and PC. Now, when it comes to PlayStation 5 games that are also available on the PS4, we have Sackboy: Big Adventure and Kenna Bridge of Spirits. Now, in terms of PS5 exclusives so far, we have Demon's Souls and Returnal for hardcore gamers, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart for kids and casual gamers, and for those of you who are more into first-person shooters, then there's Deathloop. We also have Horizon Forbidden West and God of War Ragnarok coming out next year for the PlayStation 5, and hopefully Starfield will also be out next year for the Xbox. Now, since you're gonna have to store these games somewhere, let's talk about the storage issues. A lot of people, myself included, have complained about the SSD size on both next-gen consoles, and for good reason. They're horrible. Super tiny, even less space than the fucking PS4. So anyways, I do understand why. In order to keep the cost down, they had to keep it this way, sadly. SSDs are extremely expensive, especially ones that are as fast as the PS5. If they made them any bigger, the consoles would be much more expensive. Thankfully though, you can easily add an internal M.2 SSD to the PS5, and the Xbox will be selling external SSDs and internal SSDs that you can also install for the Xbox fairly easily as well. Compared to the PS5 though, the Series X does have more storage. So, both consoles are obviously really good, and they do have a lot in common. But what's next? Earlier, we talked about the PS5's DualSense controller, but on the Series X, there's an awesome feature called Quick Resume, which not only allows you to run multiple games at once and switch between them whenever you want, which is super awesome, but even when you turn off your Xbox and turn it back on, you find your games exactly where you left them. And when you use the PS5, after experiencing Quick Resume on the Xbox, I can promise you that having to close the game every single time before you can run another one, it's gonna feel like a downgrade, even though it is fairly quick still. There's also Game Pass, which is also available on PC, mobile, Xbox One, and on the Series X as well. So for the price of 2 games a year, you get tons of games and a lot of day one titles, which is just freaking awesome, I'll be completely honest, and it's going to be even better next year with even more AAA exclusives to come. Now, I just made a video on how Sony will be offering their own version of Game Pass for the PS5 and the PS4, codenamed Spartacus, which will also include PS1, PS2, PS3, and even PSP games, guys, which is fucking awesome. Can't wait. But for now, since we're reviewing the consoles in 2021, Sony at this point in time has nothing that can compete, sadly. PlayStation Now is a lot better than it used to be, but it still sucks, and PlayStation Plus is okay, but nothing compared to Game Pass. Now, we also have Smart Delivery. Whenever you download a game on the Series X or S, it is always the next-gen version that installs automatically, which might sound normal to you, and I agree that it should be, but on the PS5, you have to do it manually. Otherwise, you might end up downloading the PS4 version and having multiple copies of the same game, or having to go look for the PS5 one and download the same game again. It's happened to me a couple of times, and honestly, it can be pretty fucking annoying. Which also takes us to backwards compatibility. I'm glad to say I didn't have any issues on either console, and there's a feature on the Series X called Boost, which boosts the performance for certain games, and it's pretty useful for games that haven't yet received the next-gen patch. If the PS5 had this feature, I am sure we could be playing Bloodborne at 60 FPS right now, but sadly, for some stupid-ass reason, we can't still, and they refuse to do that. I don't know why. Whatever Sony's thinking makes no sense to me. They must not like money. But yeah, anyways, the Xbox can play the majority of last gen and even OG Xbox games, while the PS5 only has PS4 backwards compatibility. I'm personally fine with that though, since there are still plenty of great games to play. And I don't buy a new console to play old games, I buy a new console to play new games. But I do agree it would be even better to be able to play PS3 and PS2 games as well. There is the aforementioned Spartacus, but since that's not a thing yet, we can't judge it on that. Now, let's take a few seconds to talk about the size and noise. Both consoles are pretty quiet. I mean, nothing comparable to my old PS4 fan that was so loud, it sounded like I was playing Microsoft Flight Simulator. I had both consoles next to the TV and my PC as well, and I never really noticed their fan noise, which is a huge plus. Both consoles are way quieter than my PC, and I don't think any of you guys are going to have any issues in the noise department. Now for the size and design, as you can see, the PS5 is definitely a lot bigger, but I honestly like its design better, but obviously this is very subjective, so it may vary from person to person. By the way, for those of you guys who do care about keyboard and mouse support, both consoles do support it, thankfully, but whether or not they will work in game really depends on the developers, so it is a case-by-case scenario, sadly. Now, last but not least, let's move on to the value for money. The Xbox Series X costs $500, the PS5 digital edition is $400, and the regular version is $500. The only difference between those two is the disc drive, which I personally prefer having just in case I do want to use it, especially for, my old PS4 games. And I also like to use it as like a Blu-ray player. But yeah, anyways, I do think I covered everything by now, so it's time for the final verdict, guys. The Series X has slightly better hardware apart from the controller and more features than the PS5, but the PS5 has more and better exclusives, on top of more next-gen features such as haptic feedback, which the Xbox does lack. The PS5 is honestly a little more gaming focused, while the Xbox is more of a multimedia system, but both are still amazing and you can't go wrong with either. So if you have the money, then I honestly recommend you get both consoles like I did, because you don't want to miss out on anything. But for now, and since this video is about which console is better in 2021, if I only had to choose, or if I could only keep one, then even though I do love the new Xbox, and even though Game Pass is fucking awesome, I would still choose to get the PS5 and keep that due to its exclusives and the DualSense controller. That being said, next year it really does look like Xbox is finally going to step their game up in terms of exclusives, fucking finally, hallelujah. So things might change, although if you have a PC, it still makes the Xbox kind of pointless since you can play everything on there and Game Pass is on PC as well, and they won't technically be true console exclusives. But either way, there's still plenty of great games coming out for both consoles, and I love both. Anyways guys, that's going to be it for today's comparison video. I hope you guys found it helpful, and if there's any other questions that I haven't answered in this video, feel free to post them in the comment section below. I'd love to answer, and I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts and opinions. And as always, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time on my next video. This is DarkHaven signing out. Have a good one.